Our cycle journey down the length of Spain began with an overnight ferry sailing from Portsmouth to Santander. From Santander, a short coach transfer brought us to the fishing port of San Vicente. San Vicente was a northern starting point for our end-to-end, and so the following morning some of the group went to dip their toes in the Bay of Biscay. From San Vicente, it was a 63-kilometre ride through the foothills of the Picos de Europa mountains to the town of Potes. This involved a long, steady climb of 36 kilometres up to the first mountain pass of the trip, the 658-metre high Collado de Hoz. At the top of the pass, Julie was waiting to hand out very welcome slabs of homemade bread pudding. What goes up has to go down, and so we had a superb descent with amazing views virtually all the way down to Potes. Our hotel in Potes had excellent views back up into the mountains that we had descended from earlier in the day. The following morning we continued our journey through the Picos de Europa mountains to reach the town of Cistierna. This involved a 17-kilometre climb to reach the San Glorio Pass at 1,609 metres above sea level. From the rather cold and cloudy summit, we could see our way down, stretching out before us. Near the town of Riano, we had spectacular views of the Picos de Europa mountains, before leaving them behind as we reached our destination of Cistierna. The following morning, we left the Picos Mountains behind as we cycled from Cistierna to the small village of Villanueva de la Condesa. At the top of the first climb, we took a last look back to the Picos Mountains. We were now entering the Castile-Leon region of Spain, a high plateau with rolling hills. We had lunch in the town of Sahagun before continuing across the plains. Our hotel in the small village of Villanueva de la Condesa was a former manor house. We were in the middle of absolute nowhere, as an evening walk to a viewpoint above the village revealed. Over the next 2 days, our route continued southwards across rolling dry plains, first to the town of Toro and then onwards to the UNESCO World Heritage City of Salamanca. Toro has a magnificent 12th century cathedral from where there are panoramic views across the surrounding countryside. After a group photo the following morning, we set off for Salamanca. We had great views back up to Toro before more flat roads across the plains. On arriving in Salamanca, we headed to the impressive Plaza Mayor for lunch. We then spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the city, including a climb up to the towers of the Scala Coeli. We left Salamanca on a dedicated cycle path. We will be leaving the high plains as we first headed to Vegas de Querría. It was then onwards through some of the remotest parts of Spain to Montfraic National Park before reaching the city of Cáceres. We were reaching the end of the high plains of the Castile-Leon region, and we began to see trees for the first time in days. On most days we would stop at a bar for morning coffee, and today was no exception. We had a lot of height to lose as we descended from the high plateau. We are entering our third region of Spain, the Extremadura, Spain's least populated area. Okay, here's Phil's washing, hanging on the internal washing line. We had lovely early morning sunshine as we left Vegas de Korea. We began to see increasing numbers of olive trees as we cycled through a fairly undulating landscape. We came across the Roman city of Caprara, which had only been excavated in the 1970s. Its most prominent feature is the arch that once stood across the main road into the city. We came across vultures circling above us before entering the remote Manfraui National Park. The park is famous for its bird life, and we stopped at a viewpoint to watch more vultures circling above the rocks. Our hotel in the national park had superb views over the surrounding countryside, as well as a very welcome swimming pool. That evening, as on most days, our tour leader Nick gave us a briefing on the following day's ride. And action. Okay, that's it, lovely. Each morning, we would load our bags onto the van, driven in turns by Nick and Julie. We'd so far cycled 620 kilometres, about halfway on our journey through Spain, as we made our way to the city of Cáceres. It was a very hot day through a fairly flat landscape, punctuated by the crossing of one river valley. We eventually saw Cáceres in the distance, shimmering in the heat haze. Our hotel was in the city's central square. We had a free day here, so I had plenty of time to walk around this UNESCO World Heritage City. We had dinner in the square that evening, surrounded by the floodlit buildings. We had an early start the following morning to avoid the worst of the heat. We were heading to the town of Merida before continuing onwards over the next 2 days to Llerena and then to Carmona. On arriving in Merida, we went to see the remains of the Roman aqueduct. With 38 arches, 80 feet tall and almost 2,700 feet long, it was an impressive sight. From the old bridge to the new, we arrived at our hotel in Merida. Merida has some of the most exceptional Roman monuments in Europe, just a short walk away from the hotel. First up was the Roman amphitheatre. Next door to the amphitheatre was the Roman theatre, still used for outdoor concerts and events. On leaving Merida the following morning, we caught a glimpse of the Roman bridge. Our 100-kilometre ride to Llerena took us past plenty of examples of stork nests on top of the electricity pylons. We passed Lake Alange on what was a very hot, undulating day.
Would you like some orange, Michael?
Oh yes, please do. It would be very nice of you. Our hotel in Llerena was very luxurious, and its design was influenced by the Moors. We took a short walk into town to admire some of the monuments. After dinner in a hotel, we went up onto the roof where we had a great view of the floodlit cathedral. Our ride to Carmona the next day was the longest of the tour at 120 kilometres. We were on the road again just after 8 AM to avoid the worst of the heat on what was a very undulating route. We entered our final region of Spain, Andalusia. A short section of today's ride was along a Via Verde, or green road, along the track bed of a disused railway line. hotel in Carmona was heavily influenced by Moorish designs. The hotel also had a very welcome swimming pool. And this is a view out of our bedroom window. Oh, look at that. Wow. We had a short walk around Carmona to admire the views from the fortress at the highest point of the town. Before dinner, Nick gave us a short briefing on the following day's ride.
The hotel is just on the edge of town. It's probably worth, we'll have time the next morning before we set off to Ronda to have a look at Old Vera.
The following morning, we had a last chance to take in the view from our hotel before we set off on the next leg of our journey. From Carmona, we headed for an overnight stop in Olvera before a short but hilly ride to Ronda. The final day's riding would take us through the Andalusian mountains to our final destination of Gibraltar. The first 50 kilometres of the ride to Olvera were relatively flat. We had a welcome coffee break before continuing across the flat plains. The second half of the ride was a complete contrast as he reached the first of 3 steep climbs. So Peter, what were your impressions of that first big climb of the day?
Well, it was steep to start with, and I thought it eased off after that, and felt really comfortable. It was...
Okay, you're waffling now. There's someone coming up behind you, sorry.
Yes, okay. Well done, ladies.
See you then, Helen. Well done.
Hello, we've done it!
Well done, 2 Fs.
Not the points, Jersey.
And there's the support vehicle. We saw the city of Olvera at the top of the final hot climb of the day. Fortunately, our hotel had a lovely outdoor pool in which to cool off. So what's the water like, Phil?
It's lovely. Michael, you should come in.
No.
All your viewers should know how wonderful this is.
Before dinner, we walked to the magnificent church and the 12th century Arabic castle that dominates the city. As usual, before dinner, Nick gave us a short briefing on tomorrow's ride.
Tomorrow, breakfast is from 8 o'clock. We shall depart at 9:30, but also there might be a chance at sort of lunchtime of being a thunderstorm. So that's going to be like 1 o'clock, so hopefully we can get to Ronda before that.
Our 40-kilometre ride the next day to Ronda began with a long winding descent. We had great views back to Olvera at the bottom of the descent. We then began a 10-kilometre climb through the Andalusian hills. As we got near the top of the climb, it started to pour with rain.
It's absolutely day with rain out here at the moment.
On the day we need a bar, the bar is closed.
Yes.
Break the door down. Let's go and have a look.
Okay, tour manager. So this is the bus shelter outside the bar that was supposed to be open, which is currently closed. Unfortunately, from the closed bar, it rained all the way into Ronda. On the edge of Ronda, the clouds began to lift, giving us a glimpse of the surrounding countryside. Ronda is a tourist hotspot, and the traffic was horrendous, so we were glad to reach our hotel in the centre of town. After drying out, we headed into town to a restaurant for lunch. So Julie's now going to take us down into the gorge. Arr, that gorge.
Well, pirates left.
The El Taco Gorge and the impressive bridge that crosses it is the main reason that Ronda receives so many tourists. Access to and from the base of the bridge was along a rather precarious path. After visiting the gorge, we took a short walk around Ronda to see the bridge from above and other scenic highlights. We left Ronda on the last day of our tour for the 100-kilometre ride to Gibraltar. The only obstacles in our way were two high passes at 1,000 metres and 780 metres above sea level. From the top of the pass, we could see the long downhill that would bring us down to sea level in Gibraltar. On the edge of Gibraltar, we headed straight for the beach to dip our toes into the Mediterranean. From the beach, it was a short ride along the coast and then a very nice cycle path to reach the border crossing and passport control. On entering Gibraltar, we had to cross the airport runway, with the imposing rock towering over us. We had our final evening meal in the hotel, where Peter volunteered to say a few words about the tour.
We've all arrived safe and sound after a fantastic journey. We've been travelling 16 days, I think, looking at the calendar, and cycling for 14 days. So, and we've come from one end of the country to another. It doesn't seem 16 days since we met at the ship and castle in Portsmouth. It just seems a distant memory. My history, ancient history of the Romans and the Moors has been widened considerably by this trip. I must thank Nick and Julie most sincerely for researching it, doing the due research and carrying out and looking after 14 people in such a diligent way.
So our Spanish end-to-end was over. We'd cycled 1,100 kilometres from San Vicente on the north coast to Gibraltar in the south. Many thanks to Nick and Julie Hodgetts for planning and leading a fabulous tour.